Way. Yeah, you can start recordings. My name is Yangyuanchen. Good morning, everyone. And I am the chair of the student chapters. Welcome to join our student chapter seminar today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all today, and I would like to thank you everyone for joining us. Today, we are very happy to invite our speaker, Dr. Yangyuanchen Liu. Currently, he is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Civil Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. He works with Professor Sona Scotch, who is a well-known leader in computational mechanics and materials. Dr. Liu's research focuses on scientific machine learning, phase field for fracture, and multiphysics modeling. He got his PhD in computational mechanics from Duke University, where he conduct research under the guidance of Professor John Dubel. Before that, he completed his master's degree at Shanghai Jiao Tong University and his bachelor degree at Jilin University. Thank you again to everyone for joining us. Yuancheng, the screen is yours, and I will mute myself.
Okay. Thank you for Yanron's invitation and introduction. And I will introduce our work today. So I will present our work on a virtual damage sensing digital twin, or VDS-DT, for piezocomposites. And this framework integrates two key components. The one is the parametric upscaled uncoupled constitutive damage mechanics model, or just PUCCDM. Another one is the neural operator learning parts. Together, they enable multiscale and physics-informed and data-driven damage sensing. Okay. So we're interested in the basic fracture mechanics occurs in the piezocomposite structures. And they will span multiple length scales and are often subsurface and usually visually unacceptable. And conventional methods, they usually require large and bulky hardware, restricting the performance of the structures they are attached to. And also the structures are required to be taken under maintenance, which resulting in potential downtimes. The structure health monitoring of piezocomposite structures faces long-standing challenge. The damage initiates at microscale, yet the sensor only accesses the microscopic surface signals. So the traditional approaches, they have these shortcomings like ultrasound eddy currents impedance, but they cannot resolve the subsurface cracking or interfacial debonding. So our goal is to build a digital twin that's capable of inferring subsurface damage evolution in almost real time from only sparse electric surface measurement at the equipments. So the method we're looking is called the digital twin. And this is based on model-based damage evolution simulations. Here is the overall vision of the proposed virtual damage sensing digital twin. At the bottom, the detailed microscale simulation resolve crack evolution using a phase field model. It includes the matrix cracking and the interfacial debondings. And the PUCCDM model will bridge these microscale simulations to an upscaled continuous damage model. And at top, neural operator learns to reconstruct internal fields, not just surface, but internal fields, including damage, deformation, and electric field from only limited surface sensor data. The result is a multiscale digital twin, a virtual replica that continuously updates the internal damage state using real sensor signals. So this development work has a two-step approach. The first, of course, is being a bottom-up model. That's our physics underlines that connects microstructure features to a thermodynamically consistent structure scale model. So this is our PUCCDM model completed by the previous work. The PUCCDM provide the foundation for the VDS-DT framework. It is based on the microstructure microstructure descriptors or just RAMs, representative aggregated microstructure parameters. This is used to describe each microstructure. So for our piezocomposite, the microstructure RE includes fibers and the matrix, and we will use including the volume fraction and the two-point correlation functions to describe this microstructure. So this is our microstructure descriptors, and we run about 300 microscale simulations to form this homogenized response database, or MRDB. And these two, they are used as the input parameters to calibrate the upscaled continuous damage model. So here, this is the numerical result from the PUCCDM model, including two scales. We used two types of geometry in this work. One is a square panel, another one is an L4 shape. So each color represents a different type of microstructure, and they have their own ramps and the PUCCDM coefficients. You can see that we are generating the macroscale simulations using the PUCCDM with different arrangement of material blocks. This form our dataset. We use about 1,900 samples for the square panel and 590 samples for the L4. So here, the subfigure A shows the macroscale simulations, and both of them including deformation, electric, and damage field. And each point in the macroscale simulation, they correspond to their own microstructure. And you can get the microscale simulation use the phase field model I just introduced. Okay, so this is the training dataset for the neural operators. And the part two, the stage two, is a geometry-informed neural operator. This involves connecting the macroscopic electric signals at specific locations, the sensor locations, to microstructural damage, and answer these questions concerning where does damage start and how it propagates in the microscale in the end. So I will introduce this neural operator part in details in the following slides. So here I just briefly shows the architecture of the GINO. So GINO learns a mapping from including the surface signals and the material field, the RAMS field representing the microstructural materials. And in between, we use and graph neural operator, or GNO, as a geometry encoder, and also another GNO as a geometry decoder to map the irregular shape, to map the data on the irregular shape to the structural latent space. And we run FNO to predict, to map the input and output in the latent space. And we then we project the predicted field back on the original geometry. Okay, so I will talk a little bit on what is neural operator and what is FNO and GNO stuff before we come to the result parts. So a neural operator seeks to approximate a mapping between function spaces rather than between fixed size vectors. Given many examples of input-output fields per pairs, say the boundary conditions and the solutions to a PDE, or initial conditions and the solution field, or just some coefficients, it learns the operator that produce the latter from the former. For example, to the elliptic PDE, the Darcy flow problems, you has input as the permeability field, and output will be the pressure field. So for the initial value problem, like the heat equations, given the temperature field at time 0, what is the temperature at time 1? This is the problem of the PDE solving. And the neural operator is trying to solve these kind of questions. And it is similar to our standard neural network. Operator learning requires, some questions, some equations of interest, like your heat equations and the Darcy flow problem. And you need some data sets, and you have a standardized training pipelines, which is very standard for any supervised learning neural network cases. For your data set, you initialize your neural network, and you have your input and output for the n epochs. For the data path, you compute the prediction from your neural network model, and you minimize the loss between the ground truths and your predictions. And yeah, here I shows some information between the difference between the neural networks and a neural operator. So a neural operator trying to build a map between function spaces. Rather, on the other hand, the neural networks only build a map between vector spaces that's fixed to one type of discretizations. So in essence, the main difference is here. In the neural operator, each layer updates you have our kernel integral operator that's not just on the point itself, but also on like you can use global domain here, or it's just some kind of neighbor domain here. So these provide non-local informations that makes your neural operator can work for different discretizations. And this is some brief information of a Fourier neural operator. So in a Fourier neural operator, you firstly uplift your input data to some high dimensional latent space. Then you feed it to a series of Fourier net layers. And finally, you have another operator to map it back to the original dimensions. Okay, so in each Fourier layer, you have two branches. The upper branch does these three operators in sequence. The first one is you transform it in the Fourier space. You do a Fourier transform, and you truncate the higher frequency modes of your input functions, only retain the low frequency modes. Then you do some linear transform here. This is your learnable parameters. And you do an inverse Fourier transform to transform it back to the original space. And the lower branch is a linear transform that's a pointwise only to keep track of the location, the local information, and the known periodic boundary conditions. So this combined forms your Fourier neural operator. And the Fourier neural operator has been widely applied to a lot of PD questions, including the Darcy law examples I just showed in the I think the first slide or something. And also it has been used to predict the Navier-Stokes equation, how this evolved. So the FNO can be used to predict the whole time blocks from some initial time block to the future time block. It doesn't have to have the same shape in time steps. It can be anything, or you can just use like several time steps here and just predict many time steps. And another component is the GINO. So the GINO is used to map the information from different irregular shapes to the latent space, so to the structural latent space, so your FNO can predict. So as I just said, the main difference between a neural operator and neural network is that you have this integral operator here. So in GINO, this kernel integral operator will influence some neighbors of each point in the latent space to build a graph. So this stores your information of this mesh or irregular shape. And another GINO, so after your FNO did this job, another GINO is used to map it back from the latent space to the original shape. So this shape can be any kind of shape. The only thing you need to carefully choose is the searching radius, because that will influence how many neighbors point you want in like each latent for each point in the latent space. That will influence the performance and efficiency by a lot. Yeah, this is some illustration from the neural operator package. So for each single query in the list space, you can search for the neighbors. Yeah. So here, before we actually using our FNO to predict, so I test the just the geometry encoder and decoder, how good it works. So what I did is I map these three different field from the alpha to the structural latent space and decode it back to the original space. And we compare these reconstructed field to the original field. And I find these the cyclic relative error is like below 3%. So I think it's totally acceptable. Okay, now we can come back to the problem of interest. So the problem statement of the damage sensing problem for our case is given a set of spatially distributed Ram's field, the material fields, illustrated by different colors here, and electric signals measured at predefined locations. For example, this shows the sensor location at the external surface. But this does not need to be fixed. We can have multiple different sensor layout as inputs in our training. And we want to finally predict the damage evolution in some microstructures at any point in the structure level. So this is one of the results for the square panel where we have 5 sensors at the right and top boundary where we assume they are external boundaries. You can see here, this is the RAM field representing the underlying microstructures, and this is how the electric signals changing with time. And this 3 field will serve as our input for the neural operator. Okay, and this is the outcome. So the second row shows the prediction, and the first row shows the ground truth from the finite element-based simulations. And okay, let's firstly show the results. And we also probe this location that has the highest damage rate and compare this field versus time compared to the finite element results. So at this point, given this predicted electric field and deformation field, we can use these two as a loading history and enforce them back on the microstructure and running our microscale simulation to get the final microcrack evolution. This is still done by the finite element model. So this is our high fidelity microscale finite element simulation results. But what we can do is that at the structure level, we do fast, almost in real time predictions using our neural operator, and at this high damage rate spots, which will be like a location of interest, then we can do our high fidelity microscale finite element simulations. And this is another example for the airflow. And for this case, we have 16 sensors on the top surface of the airflow. You can see this electric signal changing with time. And this is the inputs. And this is the outputs. The predicted field is the second row. You can see this great match between the prediction and the ground truth from the finite element. And we probe this point, which has the highest damage rates, and compare it to the finite element results. And also, again, we enforce the electric field and deformation field onto the microstructure at this point, and to get the microscale crack evolution. So this is some downstream application for the for our neural operator, because once it's trained, it can be used for any kind of new sensor layouts. So this can be used as an optimizer to find some optimal sensor layout using a genetic algorithm. This is a very simple genetic algorithm, relatively small size for each population, just to do a proof of concept work. So in the training, we actually include 5 different sensor layouts. They are predefined. I just trying to cover most of the top surface. But in the GA, trying to find out some optimal sensor layout that has a better prediction for your FNO. So you can see that it finally trying to converge to some sensor layout here. But again, this is just a proof of concept because we are not using very large searching space, and each generation has relatively small number of individuals. Like I think we have like 50 something here, but it requires the sensors to live only on the external surface. But this provides you some insight on where you should put your sensors, because you can see the frequency. This is a choice by the GA and the FNO. And also here you can see that for the panel, it tried to search for the best place to put sensors. Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, Yuancheng. Thanks a lot for your great presentation. This work looks very interesting.
Thank you.
Does anyone has any questions?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions, and thank you for your wonderful presentation. And I may have missed some points. I have a quick questions. The first question is like about your microstructure constitutive law, because you are saying you have sort of random particle distributed in the matrix. Can I ask about your kind of microstructure level? What's your constitutive law for each of the material constituent material and how you embed your damage?
Yeah. So, this part is basically include two models, including one is the micromechanics model, right? So the micromechanics model, we have fibers with piezo fibers and this epoxy matrix. We used finite string formulation for them, and this include a crack phase field to describe the micro cracks. I think that's what you asked, right?
Yeah, and how you embed sort of
Piezoelectric,
yeah,
piezo fibers.
yeah. Oh, okay.
These
So
are piezo fibers. Yeah.
I see. So basically the matrix does not have sort of piezo
No. Matrix are epoxy. They
only
are
one. Okay.
dielectric. Yeah.
And then you run sort of RVA simulation in the
Yeah.
microstructure.
This is like complicated, right? The first stage is we run microscale simulation. So this is like upscaling part. Upscaling part is you firstly have to run like I think have run 350 microscale simulations. Then you use these representative descriptors. They are basically something to describe your microstructure because we have many different microstructures, and their inputs and the output is the homogeneous response, and they are connected through some machine learning, just like most simplest machine learning. And this upscaled model is a continuous damage model that's derived from I didn't show you any equation here, but this is a somewhat dynamic consistent continuous damage model that's derived from your ramps and your homogenized response.
Okay, so let me repeat if I to check if I understand correctly. So basically microstructure level, you say you have sort of some input like microstructure descriptor, for example, like volume fraction
Yeah,
or
volume
random.
fraction and S2 correlation functions. Yeah.
Okay, and then your output or the homogenized response, for example, the Young's modulus or some other mechanical response you care
Yes.
about.
You can see that, but yeah, this is used to calibrate those material properties, right? Because what you get is the deformation, and you're using that to calibrate your continuous level model. Is that clear?
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Liu. Thank you for this presentation. I have one question
Okay.
about the mapping from the latent space.
Okay.
Yes, this one. So I wonder if it's just like the mapping from the natural coordinates to the real coordinates, or is it so will the latent space always be like this structured cubic space, or will that be different depending on your structure? For example,
That's something you can choose.
mhm.
Latent space dimensions, you can choose. So we choose it as like 3D because 3D is most easy to visualize as I showed here. But actually, you don't have to use that. You can use higher dimensions. You can always use a higher dimension latent space, but it's always structured so that we can run FNO on that.
Yeah, so when we choose a three-dimensional latent space, so supposing I have a hole, or maybe I have a two I mean just topological um disconnected parts included. For
Okay.
example, I have a hole or have something like donuts inside.
Okay. Okay.
Will you
So
use the same latent space or use a different one?
that's still an ongoing problem. You know that. So the geometry aware neural operators, um, they're basically they're still ongoing researching questions because currently I only tested, on like different but similar geometries. That means they have same topology structures. Like if you have a hall, you can have a different shape of hall, but I didn't test it on like different number of halls. because I assume it's gonna not be that easy. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, for this one, this is a special case. We only have like alpha shape, but you can have different size, different dimensions for the alpha. But we haven't include like poles or like sharp boundaries things. You know.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also got one question. What is the data set to train this GINO? Does it require a lot of data set?
Okay, so I have to clarify that our problem is still relatively easy because we're only using one specific type of loading, right? So in real case, you will want to have any kind of loading and any kind of, so we are basically only play with material arrangement, right? So in real case, you will have all kind of loading boundary conditions that may make you have require much more larger data sets. Currently, only several hundred is very, very small. Yeah. It's still a tour problem. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have some general questions for the audience. Please feel free to break in if you also have other questions. And
Okay.
I want to include these frameworks being extended beyond Piezocomposites to other anisotropic materials.
So okay. It should work for any multifunctional material system. That means you need more than one material blocks. Because if it's uniform, it has no point of doing this. You can always use something much more easier. But as long as you have multiple materials, you have the material information, and this is possibly totally doable. Yeah, it's not tied to piezo composite or anything. You just need like different material blocks.
Yes, because this frameworks looks like to provide a very efficient reduced order method for the multiscale analysis of those materials.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I also noticed that you have research experience at both Duke and Johns Hopkins universities. How do you like it? And did those research experience shape your research path in different ways?
So I would say that Duke has a much more smaller campus. It's a very small and quiet campus. But like I still enjoy doing research there. There you only have a very very small research group, but you can like communicate with your advisors very very frequently. But here at Johns Hopkins, we have many opportunities to attend, the seminar sessions and posters for the students. I think both are very good. So I would say I enjoy both. Okay.
Yes, sounds like they are they have some different atmospheres, but both are good for you to think about your research.
Yeah. They have different aspects, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have final questions. Could you provide some suggestions to our current or prospective graduate students in computation mechanics?
Okay, so I would say try to get involved in more activities like these student chapters, and try to attend a conference and to have more communications with different researchers. They will provide you not only the ideas but also some connections that will benefit you in your future like career.
Thank you so much for your great advices. So if the audience has no more questions, we will stop our seminar today. And you can send emails to Dr. Liu if you has more questions or you want to communicate with him in the future. Again, thank you, Dr. Liu, for joining us and give us this great research work sharing.
Thank you, Yaron, for